Welcome back to Questions of Life. This is the next video in our series of discussions on social media. In what ways do you think we can use social media to share our faith? And this is for both Sam and Deb.
Let's go first. Yeah, I think just on the back of what we've just been talking about there, I think given the year we've just had, it's been amazing for our church, social media really, to be able to put the live streams out on YouTube and people access it through that. Putting stuff up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those types of things. So I think it definitely, and I think just say again what Deb and Donald have said, I have to remind myself to talk about the positives when we're talking about the positives. But just because of the experiences that I've personally had with social media, again, doesn't mean that I don't think people should use social media, and definitely doesn't mean I don't think people should use social media to share their faith. I think it's a fantastic platform in so many ways to do so many things. And I think what Deb just said is exactly right. Where there's a pro, there's always another side to that. And I think one of the first thing I put down with this is it is a way to access a lot of people very quickly. And I know we've just said that. That comes with, that's great when you're saying the right thing, and it's something that you want to get out to a load of people. And we've just touched on that. It's not so great when you're saying things that you don't want loads of people to see. But a good example of that, a friend of ours posted something on her Instagram story a few weeks ago, just asking her friends and family and people she has on Instagram what they felt about God, what their experiences were, what their questions were, what their doubts were. And I think got like over 40 different responses from different people. And that opened up for them conversations with people they wouldn't have had conversations with before, and opened up the chance to answer questions and all sorts of different things. So I think for things like that, if you've chosen to use your social media in that way and you can handle that, that's absolutely fantastic. What an opportunity that is to be able to talk to people in that way. I think, again, we can challenge ourselves on stuff to behave in a loving way and in the right way, and that will share our faith with other people, the way that we behave, the way that we act, the things that we say, the way that we speak in conversations, the way that we comment. Do we bring encouragement and love and kindness into people's lives? That will share our faith. I think we often share our faith, don't we, with our actions far more than we do with anything we say to people.
Absolutely.
So I think actually the way that we behave on it will share our faith naturally. And I think the other thing to say, and this will come in later as well, is that there are people on my social media that massively spur me on in my faith. And because they share their faith, that then encourages me. So it's like, you know what I mean? I think that when somebody does choose to, and I say can handle that, sharing their faith in that way on those platforms, it can really have a positive effect on other Christians and non-Christians and get the information out to a really wide group of people. So I think there's all sorts of opportunities to share. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I think I'd agree and want to emphasise the whole thing that I think actually sharing our faith on social media, a lot of it is about how and not what, how we do it, how we act on social media, the words we use, the comments we make or don't make. All of that is huge, how we interact with people. I think for me, a big part of how I would share my faith would be my own journey on things. So I would share my thinking behind something that I'm trying to work out. And the reason for that, is that I wouldn't want to come in from an arrogant perspective. It comes back to the whole missionary analogy, that I wouldn't want to go into another country and tell them what to do. In that kind of direct sense, it's more about I am working this through. So let's take creation care, for example. I'm working this through, and I'd want to acknowledge, and I struggle with this, and I haven't got it all sorted out. But, this has been really good, this has been really helpful, or, what would you do about this? Or I have questions. So I think it's acknowledging that we're not perfect. I wouldn't want anyone to think I have all the answers or that I'm perfect or in any way that kind of thing, because it's just setting yourself up for a fall more than anything. But also, I think making sense, it puts me off when people use jargon. So for sharing your faith, I'd want to make it makes sense. So for me, like creation care, I might say, you know, I feel this is important because of my faith, because of this, but it would be more than that. I would want it to, you know, like when you go into another country and speak their language, I'd want it to be in my own words, but more than that, I'd want it to be in their words. I'd want the person reading it to be able to understand. So, so that's an important thing, the language, and not preaching at people, because I don't think that's the place. And I personally wouldn't choose anything that's a really emotionally hot topic, particularly if it's something I haven't been through. I'm quite happy to have those conversations, but in person or even in a private message, that's all right. You know, to a certain extent, I'll have that. I'd rather it in person. But I'm happy to have those conversations. I just wouldn't, because I think it ends up being, if it's in public and you're commenting, people start commenting on either side and it starts polarising and no one changes their mind. It just becomes a big argument. It doesn't help anyone. So I would avoid that with anything, but faith stuff as well.
Yeah, I think just quickly on that. I think, just remembering to stay on the positives and not the negatives, but I think there is so much lost doing something over a screen to somebody else in terms of communicating.
100%.
And I think that when we're sharing our faith, we have to just remember positively, love, kindness, all that type of thing, because I think we just have to be aware that the way that we want to say something might not be the way that somebody will take it reading it on the other side. Absolutely. So I think that that's just a really big thing to remember whenever posting anything that we want to be positive or we want to engage somebody in a conversation, knowing that it might not be read like that on the other side.
Just one more thing, personally, if I was sharing something about my faith or a topic that I, you know, was linked to it, whatever, anything that's a bit deeper than just, oh, this is me having a bit of fun or my kids doing something silly, I never post it on the day. I might think of it and I'll mull it over in my head and then I'll write it down and then I'll read it through because I just think it's so easy to get misconstrued.
I think it's a really important point. And I think the point as well about we're judged not always on what we say, but on our lifestyle and on our reactions, the things that we like, the things that we follow, is just as telling, I think, and communicates possibly more often than the words that we say. I think it's really helpful. And Sam, just pulling on from that, because you were talking about some Christians that encourage you. Just talk a little bit about how social media can help us in our faith, can help us grow and develop and be challenged and just be a helpful tool.
Yeah, I think being a youth worker, I'm working with predominantly the kids that are engaging with all this stuff a lot. And I think there are a lot of great resources. So a load of really great things. I think if you look at something like YouTube, you have to be careful what you choose to watch. You have to always look it up and check that it's fine, I think, before you, or talk to somebody about it as well, talk to somebody at your church or whatever if you're going to use it in that way. But I think daily devotionals, really, really fantastic. Again, I talked just before about people who spur me on, so just it helps me grow in my faith, seeing the encouragement like from what other people are doing and, you know, wanting to be better myself and grow closer to God myself because of seeing what other people are doing. I think in a way that's kind of like the positive side of not comparing yourself to others, but being encouraged by seeing what other people are doing.
Yeah.
I think that's a massive thing.
What kind of people do you follow and would have that influence on you?
I mean, so there's a number of people. I wouldn't want to name specific people from church because there are definitely people who used to be members of our church who are on social media. And I know it's all positive, but they do fantastic things, and I wouldn't particularly want to name them just because I haven't spoken to them about whether I can or not. But there are people on Instagram that used to come, particularly a couple of people who used to come to our church who are now have gone off to different places to do different things that definitely spur me on, seeing what they're doing.
So they're relationship based, so you know them already.
I know those people,
Just not like a big super Christian superstar.
No, but then I have followed different things on YouTube for times, like videos and different things. I must admit, I did start watching some sermons from a different church over in the States. And when I looked into the background of that church, I actually decided to stop, just because of a few things that I found out about that church that just unsettled me. And I think I'm quite big myself on if my spirit feels unsettled, if I feel unsettled about anything, I always check it and then make sure. And to be honest, I've stopped doing things and I've stopped using stuff because my spirit's felt unsettled. And it doesn't mean that I stop using it forever, because sometimes I might go back to doing certain things, like an example, which isn't social media based, but with my Xbox, playing games. I had a 6-month break one time where I just didn't play on it. And that was because I was feeling unsettled about it and how much I was, well, not how much I was playing on it, but every single time I came off it, I would feel not great. I felt unsettled. So I left it for a while, and then I came back to it and I felt absolutely fine. I felt no problem playing. And now we've got a Nintendo Switch, we play with the kids, and it's absolutely fine. So it's not that you come off something forever. But I think if you apply that to social media, if something is unsettling, that it's just a good idea to check it. And I think I've done that on YouTube. I also use an app called YouVersion, which is kind of social media based, which is basically a Bible app where you can show other people what plans you're following. I've done 2 plans so far this year on YouVersion, Bible plans. And John T, a youth worker that used to work here, sees what I read and I see what he reads. He's actually the only person that I follow on there. But, you know, that's a helpful thing for me as well. Just other resources that are kind of social media based. And I think just using it, again, and I said before, to challenge yourself to live in the right way and to behave in the right way, and using it for that purpose and challenging yourself to do that, I think is another way that you can grow as well.
Yeah.
There's loads of opportunities on there.
I'm on YouVersion, and I got yesterday some random bloke wanted to do a Bible study with me. So I said no. Okay, I've got messages flying in, which is absolutely brilliant. Mike Newport, good evening, Mike. He said, I often found that thinking and working through an attempt to post on Facebook has resulted in not posting. This has usually helped me understand the impact of what I was trying to say. So, Deb, that's picking up on what you said. That's really good. Kath Bogle, good evening to you, Kath. She says, what's wrong with your car? I like it, thank you. And then she said, I find social media like an addiction. You don't need it, it's not beneficial, but you just can't resist. I give it up frequently like you do, dry January. You feel like you miss out on social events if you aren't on it, though. So there's a sense that the good side of it, you kind of miss out. And then Steve Evans. Evening, guys. Lovely to see 2 become 4 for the night. Social media changes so much regarding licenses and what can be shared or what permissions are given by us to the service provider, i.e. Facebook. How worried are you all about this? None of us read the small print after all. So how worried are we?
We were talking about this before, but I'll bring it in here. We watched The Social Dilemma.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a bit like a driving test for people who drive. If you're willing to be on social media, I'd say go watch The Social Dilemma. Not because you shouldn't be on social media, but because I think you should watch it and be aware of what you're on, so that you can do it consciously, be equipped for it, and just be aware of what's going on.
What do you think's going on?
Basically, yeah, I'd just say watch The Social Dilemma. There is so much going on. Basically, just to give you a bit of a background on the documentary, it's on Netflix. If anybody's got Netflix, and you can watch it on there legally if you've got a subscription. But yeah, basically, it's all people who have been part of these big organisations like Google and Facebook and Pinterest and Twitter and all this, and they've either moved on into different jobs or they have stopped working for these companies because of ethical issues that they felt. Some of them put forward these ethical issues and nothing happened. And I think to go through everything on that would take forever. Just go and watch the film. But I think, go on.
I was just going to say, just to touch on Kath Bogle's comment, it was an interesting observation that we're called users of social media. So we're not actually the customer. The customer is the advertising companies. So they're who they're working for. We're the users. And the only other time that we're called users is if we're a drug addict.
Oh, gosh.
So it's telling.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would want to say that in all of these things, there is good and bad. That's what we need to... And to get overly frightened of the internet or... It is unhelpful, but to be aware of where we are weak. And I think these things have... Internet's the current thing, social media's the current thing. the power of advertising to manipulate, you go back 100 years on cigarettes or alcohol or whatever, we just got to be aware how people, they don't spend, 3.6 billion? They don't spend that if they don't know it works. So they know they can influence us. Just as the billboard influences, as the flyer through the door, just as Caxton with his print 400 years ago, things influence us. And we've all got to be aware of checking what influences us. And I don't think if you come off social media or come off the internet, you're protected. You're just, the world, that's the way the world is. People are trying to change us, either for money or for political reasons. This is the current medium. We've got to be aware, but I don't think people should be overly frightened. I had a bizarre experience yesterday. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't know whether that counts as social media.
Yeah, we'll let you have that.
So I listen to a podcast that I listen to all the time, which is in the top 10 of national UK podcasts. It's one of the real big ones. And they have a little advert break in the middle, and the advert was for something in Sutton Coldfield.
Gosh.
Because they've worked out my location and they've changed that podcast for me. Now, part of me goes, whoa, that's scary. And another part goes, okay, that's the way it is. I'm still not going to go into that shop. I'm not going to, it doesn't, as long as I know what's going on and I know that that isn't God speaking that I should go to that shop.
The amount of information that people have about you. So they know your location. So you look at Amazon, we talked about this before we started tonight. They know what you're going to buy. They know everything about you. They will put an advert on a website that has nothing to do with them about the thing that they think they are going to tempt you to buy. So we do talk about, these things having influence for years. I think it's more targeted. I think it's harder to get away from it. But I'm not sure it's the advertising that's the huge issue with social media.
Yeah, I would say go watch the social dilemma, because it's not all negative. And it gives some good advice on how to limit the amount that it knows what you are doing and stuff. But I think going back to where we grew up, my parents were basically on call 24/7, and the only way that they got a break, so people would come calling to go to hospital sick, all that kind of thing. My dad had to drive them, all kinds of different things. The only way they got a break was to go away. And for me, I think social media is a thing that we are all on call for 24/7 unless we choose to remove ourselves. And I think that for me personally, it's a really helpful thing. I think social media is great. I've said all the things I think are good, but I still take a day each week where I go off it. I, in the evenings, quite often will turn my phone off and go in the bath and read a book for a few hours or whatever. Well, I'll just... You just got to have, like with everything in life, you've got to have limits.
Yeah, I think I just want to say, I don't think we should be frightened of people knowing where we are and what we're doing. I really don't think we should be frightened of it, because society's always done. You go back 100 years ago, people knew who lived in what street. They knew everybody's business. That's the way community works.
About people knowing
if Google knows where I've gone for a drive, I don't think that matters.
Once we all get the vaccine, they'll know where we are the whole time. It's
well,
joke.
It's not. That's the point, isn't it? That actually the phone knows far more about us than any vaccine will ever know. And I don't think it really matters. I don't think people should be afraid that Google knows where I've drove, unless I'm doing something and going somewhere I shouldn't be going.
Yeah. I think for me on that, the question that I had for myself after going back and forth over all this and watching this documentary yesterday was, how much am I letting, personally for me as a Christian, these things speak into and direct my life over how much am I letting God be involved in my life? So reading scripture and spending time with him and talking to him about these things and just everything that goes on in my life. Because it doesn't bother me that a computer somewhere knows where I am or what I'm purchasing or what I'm doing. It does bother me that if I choose to spend 4 hours on that social media that day, that my mind is more full with those adverts and those things and those videos, and they're kind of the way they're trying to push me to buy those things and to look at that stuff speaks into my life more than the other things. I think that's a personal choice for me that I need to make. And again, stress, like, some people make that decision better than others. Some people make that decision better than I do. But it's that bothers me more. But that's a decision that I make, to have a break, like Deb was saying, to come off of it and to do things which stop me from being contacted by it all the time or notified and all those types of things.
I think that's really healthy. I think we can get sucked into first thing in the morning, I look at it, before I go to bed, look at it. I'm a bit bored, I'll check it out. But it is checking yourself, isn't it? It's what is the priority in my life? What is it that I want to fill my mind and to drive me? And this idea of switching it off for a day, of saying, I'm going to have a day of rest, or I'm going to go in the bath and I'm going to do whatever, but I'm choosing not to. And for some people, it might be that I just need to stay away from it for a month, like Kath said. Other people, it might just be, I recognise I'm on this a little bit too much. I just need to keep a check on that. I just need to look at how I can do it less. So it's not all or nothing. It's trying to work out, like, what works for me. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because there's lots of good things, but actually it can't be the thing that guides and is at the centre of our lives. So we've got loads of positives, lots of negatives as well with this. Deb, just talk to us about ways that is really unhelpful to share our faith on Facebook or on any social media, not just Facebook.
So I think I talked about the positives, and it can kind of mirror those in a sense. So I think, I'm just trying to think where to start. Treating people unlovingly. So as a Christian, the first commandment, Jesus said, love God and love your neighbour as yourself. And so for me, how would I want to be treated? I don't want to be hounded. I don't want to be victimised. I don't want to be vilified. And so I might disagree with someone, but I would want to treat them lovingly. So I would want to be made accountable if I put something that was wrong, but I wouldn't want to be hounded down and made to look like some evil person. I would rather that person did it in a loving way.
Okay, I'll pick up on that, because when we were talking about the free school meals, talking about getting in touch with our local MP and just saying, what's happening, what are we doing? You put something really helpful out on social media, just encouraging people to get in touch with our MP with a different mindset. Talk about that.
Yes, for me, there's a human at the end of whatever email or post or whatever or comment that I put. There's a human at the other end. So how would I talk to them in person? But also, I always think when it comes to talking to someone about something that's difficult, or talking to an MP about something that I disagree with, for example, I would rather find a way of talking one-on-one with them. So when someone puts a post or a story or whatever it might be, and I disagree, or I feel like it's somehow harmful or inaccurate or whatever it might be, I would always send a private message. I wouldn't comment on the post, because again, like I said, it just starts arguments and debates and stuff. And if I can talk in person to them, even better. I find it quite hurtful when it's someone that I see in person and they have a go at me on social media, because I just feel like, well, you could talk to me in person. I'm quite happy to talk to you. And there's real value in person-to-person contact. I think social media is great for all kinds of things, but if you can, I really appreciate it when people from church get in touch with me about something I've done or spoken or whatever via a private message or an email or something like that, because I want feedback.
Yeah.
But I don't really want it broadcast to the whole world to decide whether that feedback's accurate or not. So for me, being loving is really important. And also not portraying ourselves as the expert, because I don't think anyone knows everything. Well, I know that no one knows everything. And also, a huge one for me is hypocrisy. So for me, on social media and off social media have to line up, but also my post today has to line up with my post tomorrow, or my story has to line up with the next story. So I can't be saying, well, for example, creation care. I really try to grow better, but I know that I fail, and that's partly why I acknowledge that I'm not perfect in this area, because I know that it's an area where, to some extent, I am hypocritical, but I would want to limit that. So I wouldn't be portraying some image of me, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example, but or for example, when I was single, let's say, saying on one thing, advertising a talk on Christian purity or something, and then on the next one, having me half naked with, it's whether things line up, that's a random example, but you'd want things to line up with each other, and I think hypocrisy is something that really puts people off.